When you look good, you will offend people who are committed to doing the bare minimum. And I don't mean just clothes or makeup. I mean the version of you that moves like she expects more from life. You know that feeling when you show up well-rested, clear-headed, a little more intentional than you used to be, and suddenly certain energies shift around you? It's not your imagination. People who have normalized neglecting themselves will always feel exposed in the presence of someone who hasn't. And here's the part nobody says out loud. Your glow up doesn't accuse anyone, but it reflects. It reflects choices, habits, standards. It reflects what someone has been avoiding. So when you start taking care of yourself in a real way, not performative, not for attention, but because you actually respect yourself, it can feel like a quiet disruption in rooms that were used to your old version. Some people will misread that discomfort as arrogance. Others will call it too much, when really it's just more care than they're practicing. And you don't shrink to make that easier. You don't downgrade your standards so someone else can stay comfortable. That would be self-abandonment dressed up as kindness. The truth is, the more aligned you become, the more obvious misalignment looks around you. Not because you're judging it, but because you're no longer participating in it. So if your presence makes someone uncomfortable, pause and ask yourself a better question. Is this discomfort about me or about what I've stopped tolerating? Because looking good is never just about appearance. It's about discipline, self-respect, and the quiet decision to stop living on autopilot. And yes, that can make people feel seen in ways they didn't ask for. But that's not your responsibility to fix. Your responsibility is to stay consistent with yourself anyway. I think we underestimate how much people rely on familiarity to feel safe. When you change, you interrupt that familiarity. An interruption always creates a reaction, not always a verbal one, but a behavioral one. You might notice distance, or sarcasm, or sudden comparisons that weren't there before. That's not about your worth shifting. That's about other people recalibrating how they relate to you. And you can have compassion for that without going back to where you came from. You can understand discomfort without negotiating your own progress. That's emotional maturity in practice. And honestly, there's something incredibly peaceful about no longer trying to make yourself palatable to people who benefited from you being less. You stop explaining your growth to people invested in your stagnation. And you just let your life quietly prove itself. No announcement, no performance, just repetition of better choices. That consistency is what eventually makes everything undeniable. Because people can debate a moment, but they can't argue with patterns. And your pattern becomes who you are in rooms where you no longer shrink. There is a kind of quiet rebellion in choosing yourself repeatedly. Not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. You will notice that as you rise in how you care for yourself, you also become more selective about what you allow near your energy. That selectivity is not judgment, it's alignment. It's simply the natural result of knowing your own standards too well to ignore them. And if someone interprets that as offense, let them hold that interpretation without you absorbing it. You're not here to soften your light so others can adjust their vision. You're here to see yourself clearly and live accordingly. That's it. And if you ever feel the urge to shrink yourself in response to someone else's discomfort, pause long enough to remember that expansion always looks like pressure from the outside before it feels like freedom on the inside. You don't need permission to keep becoming someone you respect more every day. And that is what it means to stay rooted in yourself, even when everything around you tries to make you forget. Love you no matter what.